Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 786. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
A.K.A. Negative Camber.
He's from Missouri, where they're all known to be killers of innocent men, women, and children.
Well, that's true. You know why I've asked you here?
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to cover just F1 news because that's what we do. But before covering that news, you know what I have to do? I have to introduce my co-host tonight, all the way from the right coast of our nation's capital, or of our country. Let me get that straight. Right coast of our nation, nestled in our nation's capital. That's it. That's where she is. You know her, you love her. It's the lovely, the redoubtable
Grace!
Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I gotta fly out in the wee hours in the morning to go to a trade show. So hopefully the airline won't cancel my flight to or fro because of weather.
Who are you flying out on, or who's your carrier?
It's Southwest.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, I have all these other coworkers and friends, and they're always getting all these flights canceled. And it's like, I said, really? And it's like, yeah, just do the weather. It's like, do they know you've got like a radar map on your phone? You can see the entire nation where all the storms are.
Didn't you watch Monaco? Apparently not. Apparently it's a microclimate. Nobody knows.
The whole country is a microclimate. Did you know, Grace, that it could be raining on one part of America and not the other?
That is definitely true.
Who knew? It's like Spa. Who knew?
Yeah, I don't know.
Crazy. It's kind of like, well, there's weather, and it's like, okay, well, there's a front there, and
yeah,
it's a 3-hour flight. By the time we get there, that's going to be gone. So, anyway,
just try to always be on the first plane.
Yeah,
and
don't
fly
right.
through O'Hare, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not doing that. So,
see, so you'll be fine.
Got that going for me. Oh my! So that's what I have to look forward to this week.
Travel tips with Grace and Todd.
That's right, travel tips. Yeah, that's right.
Avoid O'Hare, avoid Atlanta, unless those are your final destination. Don't fly through them, and try to get the first plane. It's early, but you'll be more closely to being on time.
This is how bad it is. So I have TSA pre-check,
Yeah, me too.
And it's been so long since I've traveled. Because of the whole COVID thing and all that. I couldn't remember what I have to do and not do in TSA pre. It's like, okay, wait a minute. I don't think I have to take my laptop out on that one.
No.
Yeah, so anyway.
You don't have to do anything. You just put your stuff on the thing, on the conveyor
belt.
Roll
just through.
Walk through, maybe you do the little scan and then that's it. Go about your way.
That's right.
That's right. The little scan.
The little scan. This is the... Put your arms up.
Where inevitably they do something like, what do you, because I always have a bobby pin, stuck in my shirt, right? Like here, so I don't lose it, because if you put it in your pocket, you're going to lose it in case I need to put my bangs back. And inevitably they go, what's that? I'm like, oh, it's the hairpin? Why is your machine that sensitive? I don't know.
You could break skin with that.
I guess. I don't know.
You could get into the lock to the cockpit.
I find it's very strange the things that we can and cannot bring on airplanes. But
well, I can't tell you how many of those little Swiss Army knives. And I carry one of those, and it's got little scissors on it, a little nail file,
little toothpick.
Yeah, mine had the little pin in it, and I liked mine because it has a little light. So if you come up to a dark door and you can push the light and you see the keyhole, right? They take that every time. It's like. How far do you think I'm going to get with this little guy?
Well, I mean, because you can have a scissor, because I just happen to have them here, I take my sewing scissors. They're not very big, but they're a short enough blade that they get through. That doesn't stop you.
Oh, well, you would.
I don't know. I'm just saying that. I don't know. Swiss Army knives, but yes, I always check because I'm like, I'll be very sad if they take my sewing scissors.
I know. It's one of those things that I don't know if anyone listens the same way. See, I live out in the middle of America, so driving is not a big deal. Driving a long way is not a big deal. Yeah. It's kind of part and parcel. And I like driving. And it's gotten to the point where, if I have to go to Atlanta from St. Louis, I'll just rent a car and drive it. It's 8 hours. People say, oh my gosh, why would you do that? And why would you drive? Because I'll spend six and a half of that in airports and rental car lines, and then I'm on the south side of Atlanta, and I got to go all the way to the northeast side, which is to hell and gone an hour and a half. And I can just drive there. I can stop at all the Love's truck stops I want on the way. Sorry for you international listeners.
No,
the what truck stop? What the hell are you talking about?
Well, you know, if they're in Europe, they're like they've driven through 7 different countries, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'm the same way. If it's like 6 hours, I'm just driving. Like, I used to for work have to go to Raleigh all the time, which is like 5.5 hours. I'm like, no, I'm driving because it's literally the same amount of time.
It is
sitting in an airport, and it's way more stressful in my opinion.
Oh, totally. Because I can drive it, and I can do conference calls. I can stop when I need to, do whatever. Yeah. It's just
if I'm running late, it's okay, right? If I have.
Yeah, and then it's a beautiful drive down through the to the mountains there. Yeah. So there you go.
I agree.
Travel tip number 2.
If I can. Drive if you can.
There you go.
Don't fly.
So, Grace, let's talk about some Formula One, because that's why people tuned in. This isn't the travel and leisure show, although sometimes I think it should be.
Well, you know, it is about cars, right?
It's about cars. We could talk about cars.
They travel around a lot.
Hey, did you see Paul and the Heart of Racing team got a podium
They
this
sure
weekend?
did.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
Very nice of them. So congratulations to Paul and the entire Heart of Racing team.
I mostly congratulate everybody else but Paul, but okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'll give Paul.
Well, the rest of the team appreciates it. And Paul's sense of humor appreciates it. So
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want him to get too soft, right?
Right. Yeah. No, you got to keep Paul frosty,
Got to keep him on the edge.
Yes, you do, So there's a big weekend coming up. We got Baku, Azerbaijan, Grand Prix, in conjunction with a little bit of a sports car race over in France called Le Mans.
It's a little one, right?
It's a little one over there. So that's pretty exciting. That means I'm going to be up uber late on Saturday night watching the goings-ons of all those wacky Le Mans.
The Uber or the Uber early hours. That's much more my like.
Yeah.
The like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock hours. I'm much better at than the like midnight 2 a.m. hours.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's true. It's very true. So, but Le Mans always a fun time. It always rains at Le Mans. So so there's that. So that's exciting. I'm excited to see Baku, Grace, because Mercedes' big expectations coming into Baku on their upgrades and performance bouncing back, they think, in Baku, which will be great to see them do.
All right. Yeah.
On the other side of that coin, Red Bull says Baku's going to be really the true test on their wing fix and getting it fixed, which I'm not sure I understand at all. And it's times like this I wish it was in those engineering meetings to understand, because it doesn't seem to happen at all on Sergio's wing, just Max's wing.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure what's going on there, which leads me to believe that whatever it is, it's super trick.
Maybe, or, somebody else is a better driver and doesn't need all the tricks.
The guy that signed the contract, yeah.
Yeah, right. Not bad for number 2.
Yeah, maybe it's just, the guys over in the milling shop on Mac's side just, I put the decimal in the wrong spot.
I measured.
It's a little
down.
Off.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, right. I
don't know. Maybe they'll figure it out.
Or not. That's fine too. I'm okay with that.
Whatever. As long as McLaren finishes up there, you're fine.
Exactly. As long as Lando keeps doing well, whatever happens is fine.
So, Grace, I went to a carb day at Indy.
Yes.
And just before the race, and I saw your friend, and my friend, Zach Brown there.
Oh, nice.
And Zach was hustling by with somebody who was deep in conversation. Didn't look too thrilled. Looked very busy, actually.
I think you always have to be that way.
Yeah, I think he was very focused,
Always just look focused so people don't interrupt you.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it worked because I didn't interrupt. I was going to go in and say, so, Zach. Yeah, I didn't do that. Tried to respect his privacy, as Paul might say.
That's him minds.
Yes.
Paul would have just busted in. I mean, he
Well,
knows
yeah.
Zach, but
Yeah, right. Paul and Zach, were driving together in their formidable years,
yeah.
So
they actually know each other, so that would be different. But whatever. Just
But
interrupt people.
Paul may not admit it, but Paul's a better driver. So I'm just putting it out there.
I think Zach would admit it.
I think he would. Yeah, I think he would.
I think he's very open about his driving skills. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, let's talk about some Formula One. So the first thing I found interesting in the news this week is a story about the FIA, F1, and the Monaco incident. Now,
Dun, dun, dun.
I know. Breaking news, and this is from The Guardian, by the way. So, hat tip The Guardian. I don't know what our British friends think or don't think of The Guardian, but that's where I saw it. And they say there's several key issues that could be creating a bit of a rift between the commercial rights holders and owners of F1, that'd be Liberty Media, and the regulatory body called the FIA. You ask for miracles, I give you the FIA. Ho, ho, ho. The FIA. The article begins with the most recent concern over the starting procedure of the Monaco Grand Prix, in which co-race director Eduardo Freitas delayed the beginning of the race in anticipation of rain coming.
Right.
Now, this led Sky Sports commentator Martin Brundle agreeing with Lewis Hamilton, who also said this, that F1 races in the rain. It just does. And that they could have gotten the race started and then dealt with it as it came, whether it was a red flag, a virtual safety car, or whatever. That's F1. And they race in the rain, and it was totally fine. Yes, it was spitting at the start, but they could have got it started and started the race on time. Now, recall Grace and I discussing a few weeks ago how while the world slept in leisure, completely oblivious.
Right.
Little did you know, a new FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem, was elected.
Yes.
Now, if you're new to F1, you do have to watch for these things. You got to watch for things like this because they can have big impacts on the sport.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, while everybody was like, woo, Miami, this is great. We're going to do this, is fun. And Abu Dhabi, and that was a dumpster fire and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's all excited. Jean Todt quietly snuck out the back door.
I just think, yeah, he just was kind of like low key, like, yo, I'm out.
I know. And you could sum his tenure, extended long tenure, as it's kind of like that. So he snuck out the back door, and somehow Mohammed bin Sulayem got elected. All right. And we talked about, how the new president is quite a departure from the leadership of Jean Todt, who was, to the public eye, in absentia, I would say. Right?
Yeah, I think he just This wasn't the part of the ship he paid attention to.
Yeah, he just...
He has a list of things, and he can't do them all, and so that's the one he did not prioritize rulemaking in FI and the Formula One.
Yeah, and maybe to Jean's credit, he didn't want to make it about him, and that's fine. But keep in mind that it was such a departure from Max Mosley's era, which was the Iron Fist in the Velvet Glove, right? And Max, it was quite a bit different than Jean. And so now
just a bit. We're
seeing with Ben Sulayem, he's quite a bit different than Jean too, right? So we discussed it. The first signs we discussed back then was the fines over Hamilton, who was absent from the FIA Prize Gala.
Right.
And then the whole jewelry issue, right?
Right.
And then,
yes,
right. And then he made the comments about Toto Wolff, and I'm paraphrasing, sort of getting ahead of himself and kind of thinking he runs F1, and how the FIA is going to get back to regulating the sport, right? And so at first blush, you see those headlines flow through your timeline. You may not think much about them, but they're huge. I have also noticed, Grace, how he is now front and center at all the races during like the podiums and all the dignitaries at the start of the race. He's all up there, up in everybody's grill. It's so we're dealing with a different personality here, a different ego, a different level of desire to be out front and the center, whereas Jean Todt wasn't, right?
Right.
Then the Guardian goes on to explain sort of a litany of things that has created this friction. The other one being the reticence in banning Russian drivers, which some felt was wrong, while national racing bodies like the British Racing BRDC and all them took the reins basically and said, well, if the FIA isn't, we're gonna.
Do it. Yeah, right. We don't want this, right.
And some people felt like, okay, well, that kind of made the FIA look like an egg on their face there by not doing it. So they pointed that out. We've already mentioned the jewelry issue. But they also brought up the whole investigation and the report it derived about last year's Abu Dhabi incident and the recent comments from the FIA about retaining Michael Massey. All of these things are now percolating in the paddock. And then you had the Turn 14 issue in Miami, which the FIA refused to remedy on event. Now, in fairness to them, in their defense, that is much easier said than done, even if the Tech Pro barriers were available, which I read that they were.
But I think the thing is that you can't just ignore it either. Right? Like if I say to you, Todd, hey, can you call me this afternoon at 2 o'clock? And you go, sure. And your phone line goes down. You don't just never tell me that, right? When your phone line comes up again, you call me, you go, oh, Grace, I'm sorry, I didn't call you. My phone line was down. And I go, oh, Todd, no problem. That's fine. Let's just talk about it now. So I think part of that problem is it's not just like we can't do it. You have to have transparency. If you aren't going to address the problem, when you have drivers like Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz saying, hey, this is a problem and it's our lives out there, not yours, and you have to do something about it. If you just like sit there and twiddle your thumbs, that's not how you handle that. If the answer is we can't because it's harder than it looks, then here's your form to tell me about that, because I don't know. I don't know what's involved with putting those barriers out. So why don't you enlighten me? Well,
and it's a great point, Chris, because there is that contingency. Perhaps the FIA had conversations like that with team bosses. I don't know. However, sitting at home, and for all the fans at home, they're thinking, what is the big deal? Why don't they just put Tech Pro in front of that concrete wall? What is the big deal? And that's where your transparency comes from.
Right.
So the FIA has an obligation to have those conversations when they're legitimately brought to them about safety and concerns. Have that conversation with drivers and teams, but you also kind of need to let the public know what's going on. Right.
Well, and especially because if you talk to the drivers, I mean, that's what we see, right? I get it that there's only 20 drivers, but that's who we see. That's who we have the most contact with. So it's just like any sport, right? LeBron James says something, we're going to see it. Some dude back in the back office says the same thing. We'll never hear about it. So when you have two of your very popular drivers out there saying this is a problem, and then you go talk to them and go, hey, Carlos and Lando's, even if you just tell them you need to stop saying these things and don't actually talk to them and solve the problem, but you have to say something because that's who we see.
Right,
and they know that.
Right.
You use them at Drive to Survive is all about pimping the drivers out. This is the same thing. Here's your opportunity.
Right.
If you're not going to stand up and say something, then you need to talk to your drivers about it.
Right.
You have Twitter just like everybody else does.
Yeah, tweet something.
Do something. Don't just be silent on a safety issue, because then later you're going to be like, oh, another crash is inevitable, but it's like you have the ability to do something, and I hope they did, and I hope they said something to the drivers, because, again, they're the ones that are risking this. They don't owe, in that sense, they don't owe me any transparency, but they certainly do owe Carlos and Lando's and the other drivers some transparency.
Yeah.
But they should say something.
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe they'll tweet something. You can see Ben Sulayem, maybe he's one of those, drunk tweeters, he gets on there.
Those barriers.
But just barriers.
Don't do the Jean Todt and just use one finger and Columbus your way through a tweet.
Yeah.
Do some thumbs, man.
Right.
That was embarrassing.
You can see him, I don't know why Jean Todt didn't do anything about that turn 14. Guess I'll have to address it next year.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that, you always have the opportunity to say, here's why we didn't do that. I mean, it's the same in everybody's day job, right? Like, there are times I've said to my management, why are you doing this? And they go, Grace, we hear what you're saying and we understand your perspective, and here's why we're doing it. And I may or may not agree with it, but at least in a functioning agency, they kind of say, well, and here's why we're doing it. And you go, all right, let's do this. Or I begrudgingly do it, or I get a new job. I don't know. But, you don't just like, a functioning place doesn't just say, it's not a dictatorship, right? They don't just say, I said so.
Right.
We're not
Now,
2-year-olds.
And more recently, Ben Sulayem voted no on increasing the number of sprint races in 2023, even though everyone else was in agreement. And all they needed, the F1 was in agreement, all the teams were in agreement, they were going to add more races, everybody's ready to go. And at the last minute, the FIA says no. They said they would need more money to do that. And that really infuriated people. And then they kind of backpedaled a little and said, yeah, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some little internal investigating, take some inventory to determine how much more. And we'll get back to F1 and the teams on that issue, which I haven't seen yet.
And we never will, because that's totally bogus red herring, right?
Yeah.
Just say, again, if you're going to lie to us, at least do a better job. Be creative, right?
Right. So
you need more money? Get out of here. You don't.
So, and most recently of all, they just this week parted company with Peter Bear, who was the FIA Secretary General. Now, what I find interesting about that, folks, is that his interim replacement is a person who was the special advisor, legal advisor to Toto Wolff during January 2021. I wonder what the full story there is.
Oh, I wonder.
I don't know what's going on with Peter Bear, but that is an interesting move. All parties played it down. FIA is like, with warm regards.
He just wants to spend more time with the grandkids.
Yeah, just spend time more with the family. That's
right?
what we want to do, right?
That's always the answer. So yeah. I mean, but equally, I'm sure that also happens. That also happens at every job, right? You bring in your people, you hire your people, right?
Yeah. He's going to staff it with people he wants, and he's going to make the changes he wants. And damn it, if he wants Michael Massey, he's going to have Michael Massey.
I guess, first of all, I'm not as down on Michael Massey as everybody else is. I'm not saying I am, like, woo, what he did was the best. I think, as we've discussed ad nauseum, I can see why he made the decision he made. But I just think to get rid of Michael Massey in all complete capacities, as if he's Pat Simmons, is not doing anybody any justice any more than it was Pat Simmons. Oh, look who's back now, Pat Simmons, right? So I just think that Michael Massey carries so much knowledge and information with him that I wouldn't want to lose that over one incident. Should he be race director? Probably not. That's probably not going to do any good. But he should be in that room, or he should have some advisory position, because there's a lot going on in there, and he's been doing a lot, and he could really help you improve the race director position instead of just making him like a pariah in Formula One.
Yeah, I would think there's a role for him at the FIA. Yeah.
Reading emails. Reading Toto's emails.
Hey, this just in from Toto.
Hey guys, Toto just sent another email.
Yeah. Exactly. Toto made a meme of me. Yeah.
I think that would be great. I think that is very knee jerky. Again, I can see how after UAE that you feel that way. I guess that's how we, like, your first reaction is always anger. But then you got to work to your second reaction and your third reaction, and a couple days later, and you think about it some more. Like, you can't just stick with, I hate that guy and he should be fired. I get that, but then you kind of have to, like, keep on processing, Yeah,
you got to rise above that.
Well, or just take a couple cleansing breaths, think about it a little bit longer, and then then we can talk about it.
Breathe through the nose 5 seconds, and then exhale.
Right.
Yes.
I just think, it's just like, write that mean email and then put it in your draft box and walk away with it.
Right. Walk away.
Right? Don't send it.
Back away, Toto. Just, back away.
Get down.
Okay. And then in the end, The article suggests that the FIA is bringing, now get this, the article suggests, or at least it says in there, that F1 or certain players or certain pundits involved feel the FIA is bringing the sport into disrepute just as it is surging with new interests it hasn't seen in decades, which could be the very reason that the FIA are now, with the new president who desires the limelight, becoming more heavy-handed in the regulatory impact of the sport, because they're no idiot. Wherever the money is, that's where the power brokers are going to be swimming. And in this is, don't color it any other way, because this is a fight of egos and money. And that's even before one car hits the track.
But I think to all those new fans that are coming in, the Drive to Survive crowd, welcome to Formula One. I think the rest of us are not surprised at all. Like, I don't know.
No, not at all.
What were you expecting? You were expecting consistent stewardship? Come on, right? Like,
ladies and gentlemen, new to Formula One, welcome to Formula One.
This is on brand. Welcome.
This is totally on brand.
Maybe it shouldn't be. I can see that argument, like, this isn't what you were expecting, or this isn't how a sport should be, or any sort of other thing. But, yo, not surprised. This is exactly what Formula One is. Welcome. Welcome to the sport.
Welcome. Welcome to the majors.
This was not covered in Drive to Survive, but, you know.
No. Nobody said anything in Drive to Survive. They didn't even mention Jean Todt. What's going on?
No.
Right?
I mean, they don't even give him... I think they should just cover his speech from the prize giving gala, where I've never seen him so happy in my entire life.
Oh, he's brought to tears.
It's like wedding day happy. Like,
yeah,
I don't have to do this job anymore. And my son, Felipe Massa, this is great.
I know. It was so funny because, dude, nobody dropped that hot potato faster than he did.
No,
I mean, it was
like, and it's yours.
Almost like at the end of that gala, he walked out the front door, got in the limousine, and he is gone.
Out.
I mean, he's just like, he's ghost like Swayze. He's absolutely gone.
He's out the roof of the limo like, woo, suck it, you guys.
And everyone's like, okay, so Jean, that investigation,
Yeah,
he's gone like France toast at a party.
Right, he did his lap, and he's out.
He did his lap, and he's gone.
You know, he's just going to go back to going to, like, red carpet events and movie premieres and, you know.
Hanging out with his girlfriend.
Right, that's not doing this stuff anymore.
Yeah, so if you're, again, Grace made a good point. If you're new to F1, 3 things. This issue, which I'm still not done talking about.
We have plenty of time.
I know, and everybody's like, you know, come on, man.
Get to the show!
This is the show!
This is the show, folks.
We didn't even get to my MotoGP portion of the show yet, so
not
buckle
yet.
up, people.
Yeah, buckle up.
We got a lot to cover tonight.
So, this is a major issue, the power struggle between the FIA and Formula One.
Yes.
Whereas Jean Todt let Formula One rewrite the regulations for this year's cars, which, to me, was stunning. I don't think that ever would have happened with Max Mosley. Right. To let Ross Brawn and team over on the commercial side just rewrite the regulation for the cars. Right. I was just stunned, gobsmacked, because that just wouldn't have happened with Max. The other thing to keep watching is the engine regulation changes for 2026, a massive issue. Yep. All right. So there's 2 things. FIA Formula One power struggle over regulatory control. Second thing, the new engines in 2026, a huge issue. Number 3, the new broadcasting rights for America. Those 3 issues all involve hundreds of millions of dollars. So those are the big things to keep your eye on. All right. All this other stuff, well, Lewis can't put his nose to that. That's all just white noise. These are the big issues. Watch these 3.
But it is fun trying to figure out where his other piercing is. That I have enjoyed as a...
I got my ideas. And it's not good.
I know, and that's what the fun is, right? Like,
it's not good.
I mean,
so,
each his own, right? But
well, dude.
Who am I to yuck on your yum? I'm just
YOLO,
saying,
Lewis. YOLO. So
I don't know,
yeah.
whatever.
So this is, like I said, this particular issue is a major issue. The FIA has rights, both legal and commercial, over not just F1, but motor racing in EMEA in general. And while there have been many threats made over the years that to imply that they would leave the FIA and start their own program, F1's presence in Europe is legally bound to the FIA. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, behind me there is an autobiography by Max Mosley, page 280. If you have that autobiography, 280, go read that chapter. It's Threat to Leave or whatever it is. All right, if you don't have that autobiography, it is, think what you will of Max, but it's a really good read and insight to, from his perspective, how F1 was, that the F1 today was created and all of the legal ramifications. It doesn't read like a copy of Black's Law. It's a really good insight. The fact is the FIA has regulatory control over motorsport, and Max did that deal legally with the EU Commission years ago. All right. So while you might think, well, the F1 commercial could just say, well, we'll just leave the FIA and we'll start our own series that races in Europe and we'll call it, Grand Prix World Championship. Guess what? That was already threatened and that ain't going to work, right? So it dawned on the GPWC pretty quick that, well, it's either got to be another regulatory body, which is in the EU Commission that there can't be, so then they'd have to have the FIA regulate it. So contractually or legally, the FIA is embedded like a tick, right? And so this is why this is a big, big deal. Now, that's what I said read that many times before, and that's why. And you'll figure out how entwined the two are and how challenging it would be for F1 to simply depart from the FIA, which I don't think is legally possible. Now, Max was a lawyer and a politician, and certainly different than the hands-off nature of Jean Todt, who arguably gave too much say and power to both F1 and the teams, in particular, I would say Mercedes, because they were winning and invested a lot in Formula One. Ben Song-Yam, on the other hand, is a different breed of cat. He's most likely will be more vocal and more intertwined in F1, as he seems to like the attention, but perhaps not as litigious as Max Mosley could be. So different characters, different players, different personalities, but F1 has to deal with all of them. So F1, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's
the joke isn't as good now that I've totally derailed your conversation. Anyway, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure that breed of cat is Siamese.
It probably is. Yeah, probably is. F1 is correct, though, because they have to make hay while the sun shines. And if they keep having debacles with race procedures and other issues, they could lose much of what they've gained, because perhaps to their own detriment, the Netflix series is, explosive growth in Formula One. Now, the series, we've talked about before, and I think even some of the viewers of Netflix who got into F1 because of Netflix, Drive to Survive, are starting to figure it out. But not that it's necessarily that bad, it's just entertainment. But it's more of a based on a true story kind of entertainment program, and doesn't really meet the reality of the sport itself. There certainly is some creative license involved in the making of the show. I'm fine with that. I mean, I could sit and watch a very stark, just reality base without the creative license and no dramatization or any of that. I could watch that because I'm an anorak, but I understand why they did it, and all of these new fans is why they do it, and I'm okay with that, right? This means that F1 has a lot to live up to, and they can't if the FIA is bungling it up every weekend, which in their defense, I don't necessarily think they are cocking it up every weekend, but they certainly have had their moments, right? And we have talked about this at length, Grace. My final thought on this topic. We've talked about this. My final thought Wrong. No. But
just on this, we got lots of other thoughts.
I got a lot of other stuff. So my final thought on this is, we've talked about this in the past, is that the FIA, now that Ben Sulayem is there, they do need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and take a deep, long, complete look at the entire race process and the rule book and update it for today's F1. They do need to do that. So, rules that were put in place in the Mosley era or even before, there's some rules that have been there since the end of World War II. So they need to take a look at it. I'm not saying, oh, well, that's old school, we need to modernize it and toss it all out, because there's very legitimate stuff in there. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think so. Surprise, right? So I work on a large survey. Survey takes about an hour on average. There's a lot of questions in the context of the survey I work on, or any survey I've ever worked on. And questions get added periodically and questions get taken off. And so you get to a point about every 10 years or so that you just got to kind of scorch or start over, because it's like Frankenstein. Because you put this question in over here because this was a hot topic, or you put this thing over here, and it just is like, where are we now? So I think it's the same thing with the rule book. You don't just scorch all of it and throw out everything we've been doing since 1956 when the survey started.
Right.
No, but you kind of really take a broad look, and I always think you cut it up and you put it on a wall and you start moving stuff around and making sure it makes sense. And I think that's what you're saying for the rule book. You're not saying just burn the whole thing and start from scratch, but to really take a time, do a deep dive, cut it up, post it on a wall, make sure it also makes sense, and then put it back together again.
Right. Yeah, I think it's worth taking a long, extensive look at it. Also, we've talked about this quite a while ago in the past. I think it's come up again over the years, and I keep saying that, and people are saying, I don't remember you talking about that. Well, it could have been on podcast 120, but when Max was the FIA president, he wrote a lot of the regulatory, added a lot of regulatory oversight. They changed a lot of regulatory oversight. They clarified some issues as technology advanced, and racing and circuit safety and racing safety and the materials they used to create cars. All of these things played in to the regulatory framework, if you will, of Formula One. Right. But there was always this level of ambiguity with the regulations. And Max, in the autobiography, I think he kind of touches upon that. But that ambiguity allowed the FIA at the time to make decisions based on context that they couldn't have anticipated when they were writing the regulation. Right. So the regulation were pointed enough to be focused on a key perspective, issue, or area, but broad enough that would allow the FI some wiggle room, because when an issue came up that fell in that bucket or that field of view that was under that regulation, it allowed them to tack, whether it was based on some sort of material, flexing, safety, any of those elements that would allow racing on track, crossing white lines, crossing, whatever it was. The car has to be alongside. You have to give a car's, all these sort of things were, I wouldn't say way ambiguous, but ambiguous enough that you had wiggle room so you could make decisions. Now, once those decisions were made, that became precedent that fine-tuned that particular regulation that all of the teams then would use to ram down the throat of the FIA or moan or complain if they weren't even-handed. You say, just remember at was it Monaco when they were talking about Max and Sergio crossing? Is it crossing the line or touching the line? Right. Because the clarification was with Yuki, and that was he touched it, and that wasn't good. But that's what happened. So we get a lot of this, finger pointing. No, precedent was set. So these are the challenges that the FIA have in the regulatory framework. And I think I've heard a lot of commentators talk about the regulations and saying you couldn't, and I think I've had some dialogue with some of you on our website or wherever, talking about, well, they should just write a regulation for that. And it's difficult to write a regulation for every possible permutation. You know, it would have been difficult to write a regulation that would have prevented Roman Grosjean's incident, right?
Right, but I think I don't know, the line between the racing track and the pit lane is there at every single track.
Sure, that is, yeah, for sure.
And right, so I think that's where, like, right, you can't. I was thinking, you know, I also work in contracts a lot, right? The goal of a contract isn't to, like, nickel and dime every little thing. You know, you have a blueprint, you have a plan, but stuff will always come up, you know, or like, oh my God, we were supposed to build this house out of X material. We can't get that material. So do you want to wait, which is going to push back your schedule, or do you want to use a different building material? Like, you're constantly, it's not like you just bring in a contractor and say, I'll see you in 3 months, build me a house, right? That's not how it works. And this isn't any different than that, right? Like, you're always going to be discussing it and negotiating and making changes. But to me, that line, I view it as like the touchdown plane, right? In football, right? If you cross that line at any point in that plane, it's a touchdown. You don't have to touch the line. It's a safety rule, right? And so I think that's where there isn't space when it comes to safety like that. Just like unsafe releases in the pit lane or speeding in the pit lane. Those are because there are lots of human beings standing in the pit lane, you know, and there's no space for you to, like, go too fast or to not have your you know, chief engineer paying attention, or, you know, I was just like, I'm with that tells you something. I was with Ferrari. I'm like, no, you can't touch that line. I don't know why I don't know where the cut and paste ambiguity of that rule came from.
Well, if memory serves correctly, and you veterans out there, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember there being something involving Schumacher with that line. And I can't remember if there was a penalty given or not, but it did come up about touching the line and putting a wheel over the line, right? And if there was a wheel over the line, then that was. And I've seen penalties given for when the whole wheel is over the entirety of the line.
That's definitely egregious, yes.
Yeah, but the Yuki thing that came up, and then what they were arguing at Monaco, was you can't even touch the face, the first leading edge of the painted line.
It's a wall.
Right.
It's a plane. It's a wall.
That's what they were arguing.
Yes, I agree with that. Because to me, that's safety, and you can't. The drivers aren't expecting you, right?
What, are you against safety?
How can you be against safety? I just think that that's something that is at every racetrack. I get it. You have to have some amount of ambiguity, but every house needs a foundation. So when your contractor just didn't do one, I think you're going to be pretty mad, right? So I don't know. It just seemed, I was just like, I agree with Ferrari.
Yeah.
This is a red letter day.
It is a red letter day.
Like,
so it'll also be interesting to see if the new FIA under the new president will have the three cudgels that they use in the sport to trump everything. So we've talked about this in the past. There's three things the FIA and Jean Todt had in his arsenal, in his quiver, that they could pull out at any time and beat an issue nearly to death if it's something they didn't want to do. And the first cudgel was always safety.
Always.
Right? What are you against safety? That's ridiculous. That's preposterous, right? The second one is sustainability, right? Sustainability. Yeah. What? We got to be road relevant. Are you crazy? We can't do that. That's like just wasteful. It's not sustainable at all.
Right.
And the let's see. So I have sustainability, safety. Oh, and the third one is the Hail Mary. It's the cost, right?
Oh, right.
Cost caps, costs, reducing costs, right?
It's
and that's always, well, wait a minute, we can't do that. It's just astronomical. It's way too expensive. We couldn't possibly have the same stewarding crew at every single race that are consistent, the same three people that know all the rules and make the same consistent. We couldn't possibly do that. It's way too expensive to do that.
But you have all these other people that travel.
Yeah,
around
we got
the
all these other
circus,
people like Joe
right?
Bauer and all these other guys that go to every single race everywhere, but not these three people
Not
and permanent
professional
race
stewards.
stewards. No, and it's not like we're using the race stewarding role as like vote candy to hand it out to
No,
these
that's
little
right.
motoring clubs or anything for
Oh,
votes.
yeah.
We're not doing that. Don't look over
No,
there, right?
It's cost, right?
It's cost. There's no way, right? Meanwhile, we're going to come up with a regulation on a hybrid engine, which is the most exorbitant cost in Formula One in its history, and bankrupt 3 teams and put 2 on life support. But it's not about cost, right? So,
Right.
yeah, the whole thing. So, I'll be interested to see if those 3 clubs are still the main clubs in the quiver of Mohammed bin Salem.
Yeah, or if our buddy Ben comes up with some other quivers.
Yeah, you never know.
He's his own hot guy. Maybe he's more.
He
creative.
is. He's all up there. Standing when they're doing the national anthem. He's right in there, man. The podiums. Whoa! I'm over here. Yeah.
That's right. I'm just waiting for
FIA president.
He just wears it on his shirt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that I'm waiting for that text message. Grace, did you hear it? He said safety. Are you against safety? It's coming. I don't think you get very, very far into a season without that coming up.
Yeah, right. So anyway, folks, keep your eye on that because that is a big, 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 big issue. That, like I said, I was stunned when the FIA ceded that much oversight over Formula One with the sporting regulations with Ross Brawn, Pat Simmons. Not that they did a bad job or anything. I'm not taking it out on them because Ross has always said
life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
That's what Ross says.
Ross Brawn's our only hope.
That's right. So, yeah, I'm not picking on them. They did a fine job. It's just that has always squarely been in the FIA's purview. So watch that. Watch the engine regulations and the broadcast. All right.
Okay.
So next story is up. You won't believe who this is about.
You like my face? You like it?
Yes, we do, Sergio. So, Grace, if you thought winning Monaco had something to do with Red Bull quickly signing a 2-year deal extension with him, it had nothing to do with Sergio. As great as it was to see Sergio win the Monaco Grand Prix, it had nothing to do with his new 2-year deal, as that was signed a day or 3 or whatever, few hours or whatever before the race. So he already had done the deal earlier that weekend, and then he happened to come out and win, which was great. That means now everybody says, yeah, I know, Todd. I saw the whole interview when a reporter said, hey, I don't know, at the podium you said it looks like I signed too early. Is that in reference to your contract? Yeah, I know that. It's not why I bring it up. I bring it up because here's what I find interesting. I found it interesting that that despite the win and only being 15 points behind Max in the title hunt, none of that played into this. The team were perfectly happy with his performance prior to Monaco to sign a new 2-year deal.
Right.
So that's what I found. That, I thought that's pleasing. It wasn't like, oh, wow, he won Monaco. He's like, well, we ought to get him signed here quick. Here, Sergio, sign this.
Yeah, no, right.
It was, they'd weighed and balanced Sergio on last year. They looked at his performances so far up before Monaco, and they said, this is a cat. We don't, not for 1 year, but 2 years. It's a big deal.
You'd have to be blind to not sign him.
Yeah.
Who else are they going to put in that seat that has worked
Pierre
this well?
Gasly.
That's worked this well?
No, obviously he had his issues.
Right.
There.
So
Right.
Why wouldn't you put? Which I'm going to continue to use this nickname because I think it's quite clever. But somebody called him Rubens Barrichello. I'm going to continue to call him Rubens Barrichello. I know
funny.
he won Monaco, but I think that's going to, because the team orders were the big thing in Spain, right? So I think that's going to continue to come up. Is that like how Rubens Barrichello is Checo going to be? Because they're going to keep busting out the team orders. That's how that's going to happen. So, I'm bringing my popcorn, and I'm going to see what Barrichello is going to do for the rest of the season.
Well, the last time they've had this sort of 1-2 punch at Red Bull would be Vettel and Weber.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think it's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Because because I think that's the other thing too is that Checo's been around for a long time.
Oh yeah.
He didn't have time. He didn't have time for this. He's not George Russell. He does not have time to wait 20 years before he can get to a new team. This is his moment. And
he's got a great
jerked around
deal
by everybody else. So
he has.
Sign him. He's got to sign. You know, he's going to want to stay at Red Bull because there's nowhere else he can go. And this is it. This is his moment. If he doesn't take it now, he'll never have it. So,
yeah. No, he's paid his dues, man. I mean, he's kept his sponsor, Carlos Slim or whoever it was doing the sponsoring. He's kept that heated the whole time at Force India. You know, on a team that was on life support. You know, was a catalyst in that team folding.
Anybody who has raced for Ron Dennis and survived.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right. And survived the sort of derogatory comments that Ron had.
Nice, Ron.
Right?
That wasn't a fair deal.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
So,
right so that's good. But what does that mean for Gasly? So his deal ends in 2023. And I don't know, the low-hanging fruit here I see is Alpine. So they extend.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you could extend Alonso's deal for one more year and then sign Pierre in 2023.
Are you keeping Esteban Ocon?
Well,
do you want your drivers to punch each other in the face every weekend? I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, Esteban and Sergio had their moments, that's for sure. Or perhaps, Grace, you sign him over at McLaren when they part ways with Dan.
No. So I would put him in McLaren. I think McLaren would fit well with Gasly. I think, you know what I mean? I think that the supportiveness of McLaren, I think that would help Pierre Gasly. I think his, personality, his PR prowess would be really good at McLaren. So I think that would work really well. I think Alpine, if I had to choose between Alpine and AlphaTauri, I'd say at AlphaTauri. Why would you leave AlphaTauri to go to Alpine, especially if you got a race with SD Bestie? Who is your biggest enemy? I think it might be fun, but you thought, Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo was a bad idea. They already hate each other. Why would you put them on a team together, But I think McLaren, I don't know, maybe Ricciardo goes back to Alpine and they bring Pierre over. I don't know.
I think McLaren's. Clearly McLaren's stock is risen for sure, and and that whole team is doing wonderful work. I'm just, I would think they could be a little picky about who they get to replace Dan. So.
Oh, I think so too, especially if Ferrari and Red Bull and Mercedes don't have any space.
Yeah, right.
Which they don't. So. Right. McLaren is your next best option, but I think if it's not McLaren, I'd just stay at AlphaTauri. I don't see why would you leave that? I mean, yes, Yuki is improving. Yuki is scoring points, but I don't see it as it's not like Lando and Ricciardo, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think they could continue to be together, and that would be fine, and they will continue.
Yeah, as long as AlphaTauri wanted to re-sign him, if they did, if you looked at Alpine or Alfa Romeo, Sauber, I don't know.
I don't know why. I don't know why they would. Because why would you get rid of either Bottas? And you just got Joe, so you give him some time. He's only had 6 races.
Yeah, right.
I don't
well,
think
he may be. I don't know. He may have a shelf life there. I don't know. I've read a few comments about that, so I don't know.
I know.
I'm just saying what I'm read.
I'm just saying that, it takes a rookie a bit to kind of
does. Look at Yuki.
Right.
Yeah.
The France TOS finishing school, right, has done wonders for him. So,
right.
I don't know. Give him some time, give him some space, and then we'll talk about it. But I don't think you bring in a new driver and you kick him out quite that fast.
Right. Speaking of kicking drivers out, Grace. So I was reading, as we get closer to the summer, the silly season, has started to kick in. And some say that if the team or Vettel decide to part ways, there could be a chance that Mick Schumacher might move there. Now, I think the team is right in wanting to keep a veteran, with Lance. But if Seb doesn't want to, if he doesn't want to stay in F1, is Mick the right person? Because Gunther Steiner didn't have much positive things to say recently about Mick, and said he's going to have to up his game if he wants to keep the ride.
I think that's unfortunately true. Yes.
Yeah, and well, yeah, I don't know that I can disagree with that, but that's the problem. And it's interesting. If you were at Aston Martin, Seb's contract's up this end of the year. Would you keep Seb?
I think that's a good question. I mean, because some of it would depend on who you're going to put in that other seat. Because I do think that Vettel does bring something, right, as a veteran person with experience. But I mean, and that car, I don't know. I guess I would side with no. I would not get rid of Vettel.
You would keep it.
I'd get rid of Lance before I get rid of Vettel, but that's not an option.
That's the other harsh reality that the team have to consider, is that there are actually two drivers at that team. And if they're actually really serious about winning, they have to consider Lance as an optional seat too. But I don't know that Lawrence would do that, you know. I mean, that may be the ride that Lance has for the next 20 years, for all we know. But you got to look at both of those seats and put the best drivers you can in there.
Yep.
I don't know if I would if I was Aston Martin.
I also don't think that Aston Martin is particularly appealing as a place to go.
Not right now. Yeah, they're having trouble.
You know, well, and Larry is doesn't seem to be anybody's favorite.
Yeah, there's certainly a notion out there that he's not the easiest to deal with.
Yeah. King Pope Larry is nobody's friend. So I don't know. I think, why would you want to go to a team like that? Especially if you're, like a Pierre Gasly. If you're leaving AlphaTauri, I can't imagine that, that environment under King Lord Pope Larry is better. I just don't. I don't see how that's like. It's the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it would either. But food for thought.
Okay.
Hey, speaking of Lando, do you remember George Russell at the end of Monaco? They were interviewing him. Kind of made a big deal about his pass on Lando.
Do you remember George Russell? Yes, I do.
Yeah. Do you remember George Russell? What a charming young man.
Fondly, yes.
Anyway, he kind of made a big deal about his pass on Lando in the late stages of the Monaco Grand Prix that wasn't broadcast live, and George said. I remember maybe it was Natalie, I think it's Guy, and he was like, "Did they show that? They didn't. Oh, that's a shame because that was a great pass, And he said, "quote He came out in front of me at the pit exit. I was behind, and then he went to the left, and I sort of went to the wet stuff, but it felt pretty dicey from within the car for Monaco in damp conditions, but obviously not good enough for the TV producer." End quote. So he was kind of bummed that his pass wasn't on TV live. I was bummed that a lot of stuff in that race wasn't on live.
Okay. Dear FIA, if you want something else to worry about.
Let me get your soapbox out. Go.
I mean, come on. This is also very F1, but get it together.
Yeah,
Figure out how to broadcast a race.
Yeah, well, that wasn't F1. That's Monaco doing their own production, and
I understand.
It's one of the sticking points.
So Monaco. So why don't you go get the guys that do Suzuka, right? Because traditionally Japan also did its own broadcast and wasn't the FIA. Go get those guys. They're good. And get them to do your race, and then you can still be Monaco, but use the Japanese broadcasting folks because they're much better at it. But do something, people. This is your first job is to broadcast accurately what happens in the race, and they're never very often. I won't say never, but often they are very good at it. And
well, what was funny about that is Lando responded, and he said, "quote That was supposed to be mega."
I know, right?
He said with a chuckle. I mean, if that was a mega overtaking move, then he did a few crappy overtaking moves before that.
I love it.
I love it. Lando is he's just hilarious. He just goes right after it.
Oh yeah, and especially those two, right?
I
Like,
know.
If only they could work in Alex Albon while they were at it, right?
Yeah, or Charles Leclerc. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I
That's great.
enjoy them as friends. There for a long time, like the drivers never really like hung out with each other or associated with each other. And but I like that now that there's still some more romances and it's still more fun, and they play video games together, and it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a pretty funny part. And I think it's all that class, it's Lando and George and Charles and Carlos and Max, it's that class of 2022, they're all pretty tight. All right, Grace, it's time for Albon's Cats. All right, Grace. Hit me with some Albon's Cats.
So I feel like instead of doing Ted's notebook, I feel like I'm doing Ted's, electric notebook or something, right? Like, because he still uses paper and pen, and all my notes are on my phone. But I have a lot, and like I said, I realize that you're all like, Grace, that's like a month-old news. I don't care. I thought it was funny, and I'm here to share it with you. So enjoy. So first of all, I did want to note at Spain, I don't know who this Ferrari is, but when did they start being so positive? Well, everybody was just like, yes, I had a bad race today, but it's okay. Even Bernardo was like, oh, Charles Leclerc, you're the son I never had. This is so great. We all love it. Who is this Ferrari? Where did you come from? This like positive love fest. Were you like hanging out with McLaren?
Yeah.
Did you get lost? I'm just like, I'm not prepared for this like overly positive, overly nice Ferrari. It just is like, or maybe it's mind games, which then I also enjoy. Like if this is Bernardo playing mind games by being like the positive Ferrari team, which we've never seen before, I'm all for that too.
Well, you know how it is over there.
And it's always a big emotion.
It's always a big emotion over there.
I just think like every interview was like spot on. That they were just like, yeah, it was rough today, but we're going to do better and we're going to continue to improve and everything's really nice. Like, what like aliens landed and took over this team? There was no like throwing or yelling or teeth gnashing, nothing. Everybody was just like, oh, it was another weekend. We'll do better next weekend. They didn't do better next weekend, but we'll get that too. So I also wanted to give a shout out to Max's race engineer, Gianpiero Lambassi, because I love the like just try pushing the button once, Max. Like I loved how when we talked about in Baku that when Lewis got on the radio and was like, who touched the magic button? And Bono's response was, well, it wasn't pushed when it last left my sight. I like this. I like this sort of like, Max, why don't you just try pushing a button once? I was waiting for the whole like IT crowd kind of like, did you plug it in? Did you hit Control Alt Delete? Did you like just it just sounded so like the IT answer to any problem.
It did.
Just try pushing it once, Max.
Have you unplugged the computer?
Yeah. Exactly. Did you take the steering wheel off and put it back on again? Right? Like, I don't know. Did you give it a hard reboot? Let's try that again. So I just love that radio of just try it once. Just push the button once. I did also want to note that in Spain, they're really trying to be hard on me because I have often, as you've corrected me many times, I say Pedro de la Rosa when I mean Paul de Resta because their names are too similar in my brain. Why do you have them both at the track at the same time? I've had so many conversations with Flip, and I'm just like, oh yeah, and then Pedro de la Rosa, and he goes, you mean Paul de Resta? I'm like, come on, people, don't have them both at the racetrack together.
PDR and PDL back together again. I
can't do it. So hopefully Pedro de la Rosa never becomes a broadcaster because if they're both working for Sky at the same time, I'm hosed. I know who they are. I know who I mean. I just always confuse their names. I don't know why that is. Oh, I do know why it is because they're very similar names. So, yeah, they could work on keeping those two not near each other. All right. So now I'm going to try. I'm not sure how up to speed you are in the world of MotoGP.
I'm not.
All right. So I'm going to give everybody, I'm going to try to make this a condensed crash course on the last two MotoGP races because a lot's been happening and y'all need to be paying attention. I know I say that every week, but really I mean it this week. So they had a race in Mugello and then they had the race in Catalunya. So I thought that, Mugello was a great race. But Aleix Espargaro, who's had quite of a resilience this season and part of last season. So, he was kind of always like a mid-pack kind of guy. Now all of a sudden he's getting all these podiums. But Aleix Espargaro never shuts up. Literally. The more he's on the camera, the more he's talking. He's that sibling. And so, which is really funny because his brother Paul never says more than like 2 words. He's like the quietest guy ever. And so now you understand how that brother dynamic comes about. And he mentions it comes up in Ride to Surprise that, Aleix is like, oh, I love having my brother at the tracks. And Paul's kind of like, yeah, I could do with a little less of it, right? Anyway, so on the MotoGP's, channel, they have their streaming service. I was getting there. They always show the three podium riders like riding in a car together from the podium to the post-race interviews, which I wish they did in Formula One because that would be really fun too, right? Like we all kind of like them when they're in the stew room and they're talking about the race.
Yeah, right.
But, so they have Fabio Quartararo on one side, they have Pecco Bagnaia on the other side, and then they have Aleix Espargaro in the middle, and he never stops talking. And the other two are clearly just like waving at people, trying to ignore him. And he's just like, what about this turn? What about this stake? What about this stake? What about? I'm like, from now on, he just always needs to be in the middle of the seat, whether he's on the podium or not, because it was.
Or on an airplane, middle seat for him.
Oh my God, that would be a nightmare on an airplane. Yeah. That guy that just never shuts up. But that is definitely. Aleix just never stopped, and he was going to make those two talk. Whether I don't even know. I mean, maybe Pecco and Fabio hate each other. I don't really know, but Aleix was just going to keep on that going. So, then we just had the race in Catalunya where Aleix Espargaro celebrated too soon, and he thought he was on the last lap, and he was in second position, and he wasn't. There was one more lap to go, so he finished in fourth position, but. At first, people thought he had engine problems, and then he started celebrating, and then he goes, and then you can see him like, oh shit, and he goes. So he only lost 2 positions, but he lost the podium position, and he was really distraught. And then they cut to Max Biaggi, who is now like an advisor for Aprilia, and I'm just like, that is like the last person I would want to roll in after doing something like that. Having Max Biaggi being in my pit box, like that guy is. I was trying to think of like who's a good Formula One comparison. I don't know another Max Biaggi, but he's not the happiest of folks, right? He was always very like sour, and he's really the opposite of Valentino Rossi. He was always kind of like the happy guy, right? The funny. It'd
be like, ripping a front wing on and then having to go explain that to Patrick Head.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. And so that is not who I would want to have to go back to, is just having Max Biaggi look at me like that. But we were talking, we started this episode out with talking about stewarding. Well, it comes up in every show, but MotoGP there's a big incident in the first lap, and a lot of the riders have come out and are now saying this is enough. You don't give a crap about us. You only care about the cash. And so I think that it's what a lot of other drivers never say. They always kind of say, oh, I have to watch the video. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. They were all just like, no, Taka Nakagami is dangerous. He keeps being dangerous. We've given him the benefit of the doubt. It's enough. The stewards need to do something about it. They didn't do anything in Mugello. They need to do something in Spain. So I think that's something to continue to watch and listen and see if other sports, if you see some of that coming up in Formula One. Maybe not, because Formula One is not MotoGP. MotoGP is a lot smaller. But I just thought for people to say that out loud, for the writers to say it out loud, and they were asked about in the post-race interviews, and they, there was no real hesitation. Fabio kind of thought about it for a moment, and then he gave his answer. I mean, there was no like George Russell polishing going on there. And then my favorite quote, however, was Pecco Bagnaia, because he was taken out in the incident, so he didn't finish the race. And he used the classic parent line of, I'm not sad, I'm disappointed. So there you have it. I was just like, oh, that's like the parenting dagger. Like, oh, you broke curfew? I'm not sad, I'm disappointed. Oh.
Very disappointed.
I've crushed my parents. So I like it anytime somebody can break out that kind of like line or logic as the race stewards. So I just think, you should always be watching MotoGP, but keep an eye. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and Marquez is out, so it'll continue to be. He has to have his forced surgery. He just had it, but so he's out for the rest of the season. So it'll continue to be interesting because without Marquez, it's a lot more wide open.
There you go.
So keep watching the MotoGP. Keep watching the talk about the stewarding at the races. I think that's it's been very vocal, and that's something we see in Formula One. And the racing is good. One more thing. I know we're running out of time, and I know that people are like, Grace, we're tired of this. We're tired of your nonsense, but too bad. You're going to have to go longer, because I don't understand, coming out of Monaco, what is Ferrari's problem? I know I give them kudos for being the positive team. How is their strategy still this bad? I don't understand. I don't understand how they continue. Somebody put together a video of because this is, again, those of you new to Formula One, this is like a consistent thing with Ferrari. Like, my favorite was the clip that somebody put together of them telling Kimi to pit, and Kimi's like, why? And they're like, because of the undercut. And he's like, I can't even see the guy in front of me. Who am I undercutting? And then they're like, well, then stay out. Carlos argues with them all the time. Why is this continue to be a problem with Ferrari that they can't ever seem to have two strategy brains to rub together to come up with some consistent answers? I don't understand. So if somebody out there or Todd has some miracle insight into why this continues to be a problem at Ferrari over and over and over again.
It is, it was you didn't see this as much during the Schumacher era with Braun and Todd.
Right.
But if you even think back when Kimi was there, when back in 2019 when Vettel was there, they just had strategy errors that would pop up here and there, and it would always kind of just it's kind of head scratching about how they get there. And so my comment after that was, well, they're going to have to, if they want to compete at the same level of Red Bull and Mercedes, their strategy group is going to have a long sit-down think and come up with consistent killer strategy, because Mercedes and Red Bull are operating at a different level.
I get you cars. It takes a long time to work your way out of a bad car, right? Work your way back into a good car. I don't understand how the strategy issue still continues to be like a bugaboo for them. I don't. I just thought when Charles is just stranded out there.
I know.
I'm like, come on, guys, get it together. So I don't. That one baffles me still. And it was when I saw that video, because I was kind of this is like Ferrari being Ferrari, shooting themselves in the foot in strategy. And then somebody put together this video of all of these things put together. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's hard to take.
Should just be on continual loop in the lobby until somebody figures it out.
Right.
The meetings will continue until morale improves.
Right.
Bonato's debrief would start with that video. Who are you undercutting? I can't even see them.
Right. No, I know. They got to get on top of it.
Something for 15 years they've had to get on top of.
I know.
What are you doing, Ferrari?
I know. Yeah, I know. I'm a Ferrari fan. It hurts.
Keep being positive, but I don't know. That one baffles me still. All right, I'm done now.
All right. So here's some of my Todd's no shit headlines. The first headline is, quote, "He's not Michael Schumacher. Lewis Hamilton's struggles prove he's not F1's GOAT, according to his former engineer." He's not Michael Schumacher. I agree. He's not.
Correct. Nobody else is Michael Schumacher but Michael Schumacher.
Right. I agree. I think when you dig into the article a little bit, he's talking about his technical and ability to his actual engineering prowess and mechanical prowess, which they used to ask Michael if he wasn't an F1 driver, what would he do? And he said, oh, I'd be a mechanic. Because that's what I was doing before F1 and working on cars and stuff like that and karts. And so, I do think Michael had more of a granular knowledge of that for sure. But anyway, some do and some don't. Lewis isn't alone. There's a lot of drivers on that grid that don't have that level of understanding the mechanics side of it. So
no, I mean it's not like rally car where you are wrenching on your own car.
Yeah,
right. So
right,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
You kind of don't have to have that skill in Formula One, but
Yeah.
I guess it would
But
be
it's-
helpful.
But Lewis may not know which exact wrench to grab and what nut or bolt to turn. But I do think he can tell you exactly what that car's doing.
Which is what's important. Because again, I'll go
Yeah.
back to my day job, right? Like I don't have to know every component of how you successfully run a survey, but I have to know my component, and I have to be able to talk to the other component so this thing gets off the ground
Yeah.
and is successful, right?
Yeah.
So as long as I take enough and we can communicate, somebody else specializes in those other things, right? So
Yeah.
I don't have to know everything.
Yeah, I think Lewis's feel for the car is sublime. Yeah.
Yeah, and as long
Sure.
as he can translate that, I mean, and I think
Yeah.
that's where having an engineering background or having a mechanical
Yes.
background, because you come into it like speaking the same language. You don't have to like
Yeah.
learn that when I say, you know, this, that means this to you, and so that's how I explain
Yeah.
it. So
And it's not that Michael didn't. Michael did. He knew exactly what that car was
Yeah.
doing at any time. Difference being, Michael had a pretty good idea what might be causing that, you know. And so he could have those in-depth conversations with the engineers, whereas I think Lewis is saying, you know, down to a gnat's hair, this is what's going on with that car, and this is what it's doing when I do this, and it's different in here, and, you know, all of that is critical information. But anyway, another headline about Lewis Hamilton knocked off his perch by Mercedes teammate George Russell. So there you go. He's knocked off his perch.
was he on a perch? I don't think
know.
it was.
I don't know that it was necessarily a perch, but yeah, fair enough.
All right, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, there's some naysayers out there. Next up.
know.
What?
You know. No, I was just gonna say, like, yes, currently Russell is doing better than Lewis Hamilton, but I also think people don't like to look at the whole I was stuck behind the Alonso train for half the race, so I really couldn't
right.
you know, be as good as George Russell because he was in front of the Alonso train. So
Yeah, right.
those things factor into where you finish as well. It's not just about not
Right.
rally cars where you're the only car out on the track and you know you're just racing the clock. That's not how Formula One works. So
Right.
I think that yes, George is doing better than Lewis, but it's not just like George is great and Lewis sucks. That's not quite the whole picture either.
Yeah, I think.
I'm just
Which
saying.
reminds me of what was the soundbite I used to play? I was just looking for it. I had a soundbite. Oh, I wish I could find it because with Baku coming up.
I don't remember the famous Queen song about Azerbaijan. I can't speak about Baku.
Oh yeah,
Azerbaijan.
Baku.
Yeah.
No, you don't remember that?
Azerbaijan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
No, it was a soundbite of Seb saying, "I don't know what Alonso's doing. He's just taking a bus tour around Baku."
I do. See, you know what? That's why we need Vettel because he does have the great one-liners. That
He
is
does.
for sure true. His
He
radio
does.
is always good.
I know they are. They're so good.
Think of the
Let's see.
children.
Next up, Lando Norris accused of destroying Daniel Ricciardo, says Eddie Jordan.
Okay.
Destroying,
Now, you know what?
Grace.
I was just like, well, that's a little hyperbolic. Oh, it was Eddie Jordan, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's Eddie Jordan. Yeah.
that's like everyday language for that guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
That comes with the territory.
that's right.
Yeah. Let's see. Next up, F1 star Sergio Perez issues groveling apology to wife after being filmed dancing with mystery woman after Monaco GP win. Ooh, salty. That's the tea, Grace.
First of all, I saw the video of him very intoxicated, right? And they're trying to bring him down the steps of a yacht.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is where age comes in play. At some point, you can't be partying on the top floor. You get a couple of drinks in you. Your people need to move you to the first floor.
Yeah.
You ain't getting down them steps. I was like, they should just either get like the boards they use to like evacuate people, or like the chutes like you have on an airplane.
There you
like,
go.
Who's getting down those steps?
I know.
That's not. Just sit down and go down on your butt. Don't even try to go down.
Yeah,
those
that
steps.
wasn't a good look.
No, and I was just like, so at some point, maybe lesson learned. As old people, you have to party on the ground level. You can't you can't be doing steps. That's gonna just be a bad idea. So keep away from the steps. I mean, what? That's between him and his wife. I don't have a. I mean, don't get caught on camera. I guess I don't know what their relationship is, but that's
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Sergio,
there you go. Watch out,
P's and Q's,
Sergio.
sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
mind your P's and Q's. You got a family at home.
That's right. That's right.
Take care of that family. Take care of that wife. She's been with you through all the thick and thin.
And party on the first floor. That's
party on the first floor and moderate. Glass of water in between each cerveza, sir.
Very important. Hydration and partying.
No moss. No moss.
No, that's right.
So
learn.
That's
learn,
right.
my friend.
Finally, the headline is Netflix in 4-way tussle to secure mammoth broadcasting F1 deal in America.
Who are the other three?
I will tell you.
Oh.
First, Netflix.
Okay.
Second, current broadcaster ESPN.
Right.
Third, Amazon. And fourth, NBC Universal.
Oh, well, yes, those guys.
Yeah, they used to cover it, and they lost it to ESPN. Well, ESPN was like the first year Liberty took over, Sean Bratches pretty much handed them a free broadcast deal. And then ESPN offered $70 million, which is 10 times what it previously paid. And F1 is looking for $100 million for the deal. Remember that third thing I was telling you?
Yeah,
FIA power struggle, engine rules, F1 broadcast rights in America, $100 million. Kind of a big deal.
So here's the thing. I really don't care who has it, I guess. But don't you dare take away Ted's notebook. You finally gave it to me. Don't take it away.
I agree.
Don't make me search YouTube hoping to find it until it gets taken off.
Right.
You gave it to me. Don't take it away.
I know. Don't take away Ted's notebook. It's funny.
Ted cracks me up. It's good. It's good. And it's good insight. I usually learn something.
That's right. He likes a good Cornish pasty, but he can't stand the smell of them, I found out. Yeah, he tweeted me that. Yeah.
There you go.
Who knew?
I just think whatever you do, Ted Kravitz is a gem. He's a national treasure.
He is a gem. He's a national treasure, that man.
Don't take him away, and whoever gets the coverage,
right?
It's fine. I don't care.
All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
All right, first up, Eric asks, "Hey folks, I'll throw you a random stat to get you excited. This current run of 8 races without the German national anthem is the longest since the middle of 2012, which featured 9 Grand Prix without it, from Spain to Italy." There you go. A completely random stat to anger my Teutonic neighbors. There you go. No German national anthem.
No, Vettel, what are you doing?
I know. What's going on, bud? So, yeah, and being a Ferrari fan, it became so common to hear the German and Italian national anthems back to back. Now when I hear the German anthem, when Mercedes is winning, and it was with the British, or for Valtteri. So anyway, yeah, it's different. So there you go. Thanks, Eric. That's a good stat.
That is crazy.
It is. Dan Coghill asks, "Hello, Todd, Grace, and Paul, the International. Love the podcast. Best part of the week driving to and from work." Well, thanks, Dan. Keep up the great work. And I'm finally going to see my first F1 race live in Austin this October.
Congratulations.
I'm attending with 5 others who all but one enjoy F1. Just maybe not as much as myself. One person in particular, my wife, isn't super into it yet. We bought general admission seats, and I'm wondering if there are spots at Coda you suggest to post up for great views, different driving styles, and big adrenaline rushes. I'll be going to all the practice, qualifying, race, and the whole day. So I also want to know if there are good spots to see the drivers and cars closer up before race day. Mostly my man Max. One last question. Do they still allow fans onto podium grounds for ceremony and anthems? I think they are doing that still, allowing them to come into the main straight for the podium. You might look and see if they have a podium walk that you could get into. There's a time over the weekend you can walk through the paddock. So you could go through and see the garages. And that. I think some of them did that.
Like on Thursday.
Yeah, I think some of them did that. But Dan, what I've said for quite a while, and I just got an email. It's funny you posted this. I got an email from somebody else this week asking Paul and I the same question. And as I said in that email, for my money, I thought the best. Now the prices have all gone up, but when F1 started coming in Austin, I thought, bar none, the best deal is to get the $99 general admission ticket and go in and sit on one of the grassy hills between the grandstands. It's not grandstands, it's grass. Bring a blanket and sit anywhere from turn 6 through 9 or 10. And that is, in my mind, the best place to see an F1 car do what an F1 car does best at full tilt. So they go through those S's at full chat. You'll see the S's get tighter, and you'll see those F1 cars shift and change direction. It'll just blow your mind. The little infield section and the kind of turns and stuff, not so much. 19 and 20 are okay in my mind. But ultimately, coming through the S's and out of the S's is just epic. That's... Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say I love that.
I agree, and I think I will just add to that. What I liked about the S's, again, especially having a Paul Charsley with me, was, I think we often talk about, like, what makes a driver great. Alonso's great at this, or Lewis is great at that. And I think it's really hard to see what that means in a car. But sitting in the S's, you can very easily see how one driver approaches that versus another driver and where they break. And so I think, especially for someone like your wife who's new to this, I think it's an easy place to kind of see the different lines they take and to understand what makes Alonso great at this thing or Vettel great at this thing, that you're able to really visualize it in a way you can't, in turn 1 or something like that. And it's something you certainly can't see on TV, and especially because they don't just like fixate on one corner for more than a second. So I think that whatever you do, I always do think it's nice to kind of find a spot and stick in it, because then you can kind of see that, and you can hear it too, right? You can be like, oh, that didn't sound right. Like you can hear the different notes of the engines and how the cars sound, and you can see it visually. But I agree. I really think the S's are a great place to sit. And
it is. It's great. And when they get down to 10, 11, and they start to make that turn and then go back the other way, you can also hear the throttle input and who gets on throttle earlier than others. So whose car's hooked up and not. And so, it's a great place to sit. And anytime I've been there 3 or 4 times, and every time I like to walk down there and watch because, that's, to me, it's so cool to see him work. So hopefully that helps.
And walk around some. I think.
Walk around.
If you can sit in other grandstands, not on Sunday, but usually if you're there on Friday, you have a little more freedom to walk around. Definitely do that. See the different places, see the different, straights or turns or whatever. But
right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think about the news, but share your opinion. You can do that over to theparcfermé.com. Share your own opinion. If you like this podcast, give us a good, good review. Hey, did I mention Colin and Sammy?
No, you did not.
Colin and Sammy. Hey, big shout out to both Colin and Sammy. They went and visited Paul at the INSA race. And they're listeners. And so I forgot to shout them out at the beginning of Albon's Cat. So sorry about that, Colin and Sammy. And hopefully you made it to this part of the podcast. Otherwise, you missed this shout out. And wouldn't that suck?
Well, Yeah, and then later we can be like, I don't remember you talking about that. We did talk about it.
Well, I went to all the trouble to go see Paul. He didn't say anything about me on the podcast.
God, that Paul guy.
Yeah, it's not Paul's fault. It's mine, Colin. It's mine, Sammy. Anyway,
Oh,
give us a good rating over at iTunes. Huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because without you, this podcast wouldn't exist, quite simply. And so we're incredibly grateful for your support, because we wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for your support. So if you're not a Patreon supporter, please find one and pat them on the back and say thank you for making this podcast possible.
Yeah.
And with that, oh boy, until we come back next week and I try to scare up Paul to review the Azerbaijan Grand Prix from Baku and Alonso's bus tour around Baku.
Oh, Baku.
Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.